Hey everyone, Joe Soto here. We've got Doug Wing on the show, the former vice chairman and owner of Little Giant Ladder Systems. I can't wait for you guys to hear his story and, more importantly, be able to get some of the insights and lessons that he has in sales, business, building your business, dealing with the struggles that entrepreneurs have to deal with, and a whole bunch of other things that we have in store to ask Doug on the show. Stay with us. We got Doug Wing. I'll be right back with you.
This is the Not Your Average Joe Show, where each week we bring you sales, marketing, and mindset strategies you need to get to your next level. And now, here's your host, international business mentor, Joe Soto.
Doug Wing, welcome to the Not Your Average Joe Show.
Hey Joe, how are you today? Good to see you again.
Hey man, I'm wearing your shirt. Listen, Doug, some of you guys are like, well, did Joe just find this shirt? No, Doug sent me this shirt, and now I'm officially his wingman. And he gets to be mine on this show today because we get to ask him all the questions. Are you ready for this?
You betcha. Yeah, I've been looking forward to this for a long time. We've been talking about this for a while, and I know you've got a long list, so I'm grateful to be on the show. Thank you.
Well, I'm thrilled that you're here. It's our privilege. I can't wait for everyone to hear a little bit more of your story. And then I've got some of those hard-pressed, rapid-fire business questions for you. And I think that's shooting from the hip and us having a conversation. It can be really insightful, helpful for my audience. It's a mix of entrepreneurs, people who are thinking about or wanting to be entrepreneurs, consultants, digital marketing agencies, digital marketing consultants. So let's get started. First of all, why don't you just take a moment, because I can't do your bio justice, and share a little bit. I mean, there's people who are watching this who have a Little Giant ladder in their garage right now. And there's people who will be watching this for years to come they'll be like, oh my gosh, I have a Little Giant ladder in my garage. Let's talk a little bit about, tell us a little bit about your story. Where does Doug Wing come from? And then we'll dive into some business questions.
Well, I appreciate it. Yeah, so I was born in Germany. My dad was in the military, and he met my mom there, and they got married. And she's from Germany. And then I was born there, and then we moved.
Oh.
And then my dad was working for a life insurance company. They moved him back to Europe in Germany, and he was opened up an agency there, and had another partner working with him. And then this partner saw the original Little Giant ladder. Of course, it wasn't called the Little Giant then. And then this German house painter, he designed, he's the designer, and this friend of my dad's got all excited, and he kept bugging my dad. My dad's like, hey, we're here to sell insurance, not ladders. And so eventually he won my dad over, and my dad went and saw this prototype, and he got pretty excited about it, and it kind of all evolved from there. He became very good friends with this German designer, and my dad bought a container of them, and he told my mom, hey, I'm quitting the insurance business. I'm going to sell ladders. And she's like, hey, you got 7 kids to feed, and you're going to sell ladders? This sounds crazy, but she went along for the ride with him.
Well, and when you say went along for the ride, tell us what the business turned into for people who are completely unfamiliar with what is the coolest ladder sold in all the major stores like Home Depots and Lowe's, right? It's in both those, correct?
We used to be in both, and then Lowe's came on and wanted an exclusive, and so
okay, and they're willing to pay for the exclusive.
Yeah, and so we signed at the time when I was still there, we had signed a big deal with Lowe's, and so Lowe's has been really happy. But yeah, so what happened is I like to tell people my dad was he bought a container full of ladders from this guy, and we went back to Utah, and my dad had a ladder that he took with him, and he showed everybody and got them all excited, and pre-sold a container full. And then the funny thing was when he went back, when the container came, he went back to all these people, and they all had excuses. They're like, oh, my daughter got married, and my son's going to college, and my wife is sick, and so we can't. So all the people that said they'd buy ladders just backed out. So my dad had a container full of ladders, and he had to figure out a way to sell them. So he decided just to go door to door. I mean, toe to toe, and come up with a presentation. And he had this those ladders that were all pre-sold, he had to go and sell them again, and that's how it started. Yeah. So from there, obviously the company grew, and that's the one thing I want to let people know is, there's so many people out there that think Little Giant was just an overnight success, Joe. And I mean, the company's been around since 72, and there was a lot of highs and lows. There was a lot of hard times. And, it takes a long time to develop a brand, to develop a business, but with a lot of hard work and perseverance, and, with the right people and the right products, we were able to be very successful. Went into, we did a huge infomercial that really lifted the company. And then went into big boxes and big retail. And so, but I always like to tell people that, it doesn't happen overnight. You really have to work hard and persevere and pay your dues and, along the way, and, just keep driving and grinding, and eventually, you're going to make it.
Yeah, I saw a video you recently posted. I think you shared it with our mastermind group. We're grateful that we have you in this mastermind group, because you bring so much light, experience, fun, and charisma to the group. And one of the things you did was you did like a outside. You showed the building. You were showing, and it's massive. Like how many? Maybe I can ask you what at its peak. How many employees did you help oversee at the company?
About 400. Yeah. And that building is about 400,000 square feet in Utah. And, I mean, at our highest, production, we were about 8,000 ladders a day, which is incredible.
Yeah. And Mark says the Little Giant as a trusted ladder inside and outside the house. I have a lot of different questions around this my goal was that you're on a lot of different shows. My goal is to ask you some questions that you normally don't get asked. One of them is a question around the mindset of selling something that's higher ticket, higher value. Your ladder is not the cheapest ladder that someone can buy, right? People can buy the company, your father, Hal, who you quote on the homepage of your website, which we'll talk about in a moment, and who you've, learned obviously a lot of your own business savviness from, and developed your own along the way, working in the company and growing through the ranks. But he had to have had something that was rooted in his mindset that I'm going to sell a ladder in a fairly what was seeming like hyper competitive, commoditized, mature market. To become the market leader with not the cheapest product takes a certain mindset. And we have got people who are watching who may think, I need to compete on price. And I don't think you guys did that. Talk a little bit about that mindset.
Yeah. So that's a good point. Little Giant, throughout my career, we were double the price of our competitors. And you might say, wow, how did you guys sell at such a high price? And really it began with quality. And our reputation. And so my dad would never sacrifice quality. From time to time, people would come out with knockoffs at half the price out of Asia. And a lot of people would, even within our company, people would panic, and they would be like, oh man, how are we going to sell against these guys? And I will tell you that people can make a product look very close, but there is a difference in the materials and the workmanship. And when people first knocked us off on those original ladders that were on the infomercial, one thing they didn't realize is that the Chinese people didn't know how to weld very good. And so they copied the ladder to the T, except for they didn't have over, the 20 years plus experience that we had welding. And so when these ladders first came out, they were all breaking. And, people were like, at first they were panicking. And my dad's like, he had this little saying, he said, hey, they know what their product's worth, and so do we. So we just never backed off on our quality. And then people started having failures on those knockoffs. And some customers that left actually started coming back and buying ours at the higher price because they were having issues with quality and some of their employees got hurt. And, you start having lawsuits and things like that. And those can add up to millions of dollars. And so really it begins with quality. And we just never wavered on quality. And it really helped the company from day one.
And one of the things that you guys can ride when you've built up a reputation is you can ride on the back of your brand. That's tied to your reputation. It's tied to the quality. I wrote down quality, reputation, and brand because you built up one of the most well-known, most trusted premium ladder brands in the world.
Yeah, and I can tell you a story about how that worked. So when the infomercial came on, Home Depot had a knockoff ladder that was half the price, and people were actually walking into Home Depot and they were saying, "We want a Little Giant," and they said, "Oh, we've got the same ladder right here that's half the price." It was named Gorilla, and some people would buy that ladder, but there were a certain amount of people that said, "No, we want the Little Giant." And so it really forced Home Depot at that time to bring in Little Giant. They had both. They had our ladder at double the price, and then they had the knockoff ladder at half the price. And certain people would walk in and say, "We don't care what that other ladder costs. We want the Little Giant brand." And so that just tells you the power of this infomercial and the power of the branding and the quality that we had, that there were some people that would just say, "We don't care what it costs. We want to have the Little Giant." So,
yeah. So this is a powerful lesson, not just for people who are in the product business. It's a powerful lesson for people who are also in the service business and have built a reputation for themselves where you can command maybe a higher fee for your services because of the quality of work you've done in the past, what people say about you, and now what you can lean on as, social proof, and quite honestly, the strength of who you've built your personal brand around. So I want people who are watching this, who are going, Joe's talking to Doug. Doug has a extremely rich background, extensive background, 45 years you spent at some level with the company, right? You're growing up as a kid in the company, working with your dad to becoming the vice chairman and overseeing up to 400 employees. That's not an easy road. And those principles and lessons you've learned can be adopted no matter who you are, who's watching this. And so really important. So tell me about what would you say is the biggest lesson you've learned in sales? Somebody's watching this and trying to improve their sales skills, their sales chops. What would you tell them?
Well, I think number one, this is something that Hal Wing preached often. And he had this little saying: "You can tell anybody anything you want to, as long as it's the truth." And so for me, that was lesson number one, is when you're going to represent the company, you always tell the truth. And, our competitors, throughout the time that I was with the company, there's always some competitors that will try to, badmouth you, or, they just say, "Oh, they just want too much money for their product. It's really not that good. They're overpriced," things like that. But we took the high road at Little Giant. My dad said, "Hey, we're going to tell the truth. We're going to be ethical." And that really served us well. We did not get into, bad mouthing our products. Even when we found out that they were failing tests and that they weren't, holding up, we wouldn't go around bad mouthing our competitors. We would just say, "Hey, here's why we feel like ours are superior. We do this, we do that, we do, these are some of the things that we do that they don't do. And there's a reason why we do them and they don't." So, always taking the high road and telling the truth and being on the ethical side, I think was number one lesson I learned from my father in sales, was just always do that, and the business will come to you and follow.
I first of all, I love that, because now you're talking about selling with integrity. But the first part of the sentence is also very telling and rich with insight. I don't want people to miss, which is, he said you can tell them anything, and probably thinking that you should, because as long as it's truth. So let's take that. Let's put that to the side, because that's important. But then you gave an example of it, which is go out there and point out your points of differentiation
Mm-hmm.
and your points of superior quality in comparison, or wherever your differences are, that puts you and showcase you in the brighter light in the eyes or perception of the eyes of the customer, so you can stand out. And it's clear what your points of value and differences are, which is what he did, as long as you're telling the truth, which is what you did. So that's really valuable, because a lot of people don't toot their own horn. They don't think about their points of differentiation between them and a competitor. And they should, because then they should talk about it and bring it to light.
Mm-hmm.
And so many people don't realize that sometimes it's just in order, especially when you're talking about a mature market. This is brilliant what he did. And just you kind of take it for granted, I think, because it was just part of your culture and part of what you did. But it's really insightful that you guys had no problem speaking that out and putting it out there in the market. Because if you're in a competitive market where you're being perceived potentially in a group that's kind of a matured, or everybody's the same, or it's just a ladder, or if I'm looking at this, if I'm watching this or listening to this as a podcast right now, and it's like, oh, I'm a consultant. No, how are you different than the next person this person is going to be assessing you against? How is your product or service different? And explain why and what makes it better.
Mm-hmm.
So don't expect customers to mind read, right?
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm just unpacking a lot of what you just said, which I think comes real naturally for you guys.
Yeah, and then obviously, with things like our quality, and we had lifetime warranty on our ladders. We had replacement parts available, and these other companies came in and they would just fall apart, and they were just junk. But the Chinese people could make them look exactly the same. I mean, they just looked very, very similar. And like, for example, I had a friend that was in construction. He had a bunch of little giants. They were down in St. George, Utah, which is way south, down by Vegas, down by Arizona. And they needed another ladder. And they went into Home Depot, and they had that ladder that was half the price. And a good friend of mine, Mike Jones, he was telling me that they bought one of those ladders, and they were framing houses. And seriously, they one day, they were working one day, and they completely destroyed this knockoff. I mean, it just fell apart. And so they took it back to Home Depot, got a full refund. And then when they came back to Utah County, up in where we are, they came and bought another little giant. So again, this is a company, building houses, beating the tar out of these ladders. And, they said, oh, this is awesome. They look just like little giants. They're half the price, but they learned their lesson really quickly that these didn't hold up.
Yeah. And then you end up paying more than you would have paid if you would have paid in the first place with little giants.
Yeah. And the other thing that served us real well was, we would say, hey, if you guys, if your employees fall off ladders, you're going to be, first of all, they could get hurt, and you're going to have workman's comp issues. You're going to pay more. You could have lawsuits and all of those kinds of things. And so we would just, constantly talk about those types of things. And as you know, in America, I mean, workman's comp issues and lawsuits are huge. I mean, they cost company millions of dollars.
For as long as you guys have been, Little Giant was around. I know that you're now on to doing other things, other entrepreneurial ventures. You're writing a book. We're going to talk about that in a moment. In fact, I'll put it at the bottom here so everyone can get on Doug's website and make sure you sign up for the release of his book. That puts a little pressure for him to finish it sooner than later, which I'll put it on here. So you can go to dougwing.com. And if you're listening to this and not watching, it's DOUGWING.com, Doug Wing, just like it sounds.com. And you'll be prompted to sign up for his book release when you get there. 1972, man, that was the year I was born. So I'm dating myself, and it's a long time that the company was around. And your father, especially being an immigrant too, had to overcome great adversity. What would be some things you learned from him, some philosophy or mindset, some strategic advice maybe that you could share with the audience today on how to maybe overcome some adversity in the midst of some entrepreneurial struggles some people might be going through right now?
Well, that's a good question. Excuse me. My dad had this killer drive. I mean, he just didn't take no for an answer, and he persevered. And, I think for individuals starting a new company, We live in a society where we want everything so quickly. We can pick up our cell phones, we can Google anything, we can just get information so quickly. And I think people need to realize that if you're going to build a company that's going to last through decades, boy, that's going to take some time. And so, be prepared to have a long, hard, not easy road in a company, and that there's going to be a lot of ups and downs, a lot of highs and lows, and it's not going to be easy, and it's going to, probably take 2 to 3 times longer than what you think, and cost probably 2 to 3 times more than what you think to build a company. Joe, you've got companies, and you just have to be prepared for the long haul, and be just be prepared to ride it out. And a lot of people don't know that Little Giant had some very difficult years, years where we really struggled. And but the one thing that I noticed about my dad through thick and thin, even through the really hard times, was he never showed fear. He had this mindset of we've made it, we've always made it, we're going to make it through this. And he was just so positive, and we made it, and there were guys that were like, should I quit, Hal? Is it time? Man, the things are getting kind of scary. Should I go find another job? And my dad's like, no, we're going to make it. And we did, so just be prepared for a lot of hard ups and downs. But my dad always said, working for yourself is always better than working for someone else. And so there are advantages to being a businessman and being your own boss. And there's lots of fun, but lots of hard work, and just be prepared for a lot of hard work,
Yeah, I love that, because it's plain and simple. The quote on your website from your dad says, if you concentrate on building a business and not the man, you will not achieve. But if you concentrate on building the man, you achieve both. Tell me a little bit about the importance he put on the people that you surround yourself with, that you delegate to, that you build a team with.
Yeah, my dad grew up, his parents were poor. I mean, he came from nothing. And I think he always remembered that growing up, he was kind of the underdog. He really valued employees, and he always taught your employees are your number one asset, not your products, not your patents, not your buildings. And if you treat your employees the way that they should be treated, they're going to climb mountains for you. They're going to carry you to the tops of those mountains, and they're going to be very loyal to you. So there's a lot of stories about my dad taking chances on people that a lot of companies wouldn't have done. And he was just a builder of people. In fact, when my dad passed away 9 years ago, the governor of Utah said, Hal Wing always told people he was in the ladder business, but that's not true. He was in the people business. And so that's what my dad was, really a builder of people. And then they helped him build ladders and just, make the company a huge success. So we have a really unique culture at Little Giant. It was more of a family atmosphere. And my dad really loved and cared for his employees, and they knew he did.
That's really, that's awesome, Doug. I wrote a couple of these things down. He's a builder of people, but you're not in the ladder business. This is important because there's people watching this again who they get lost in the content and not open. They're not opening up their minds to the concepts. So the content is Little Giants of the Ladder Company, but the concept is, even your dad understood that in the pursuit of building a multi-million-dollar business or in the ladder and in an industry that was fairly matured and saturated, he was going to be in the people business, and that was going to be part of that differentiation as well, and what could keep the company together and what can keep the glue together. So how many people forget that, what kind of business they're in, right?
Mm-hmm.
I would venture to say we're all in the people business if we were to take your dad's advice and build that way accordingly, and then the company and the success will come from it. Okay.
I mean, look at
all these notes.
Yeah, well, look at the way things are right now with labor, Joe. I mean, if you go out right now and go to a restaurant, and every place says help wanted. You walk into any store now because COVID's pretty much done. And so now we have these employee shortages. And so now, even more so than ever before, is the time to take care of your employees, because It
Yeah.
is such a competitive market. I mean, you're really going to have to take care of your people and pay them well and treat them well and train them well. And then they're going to help you, because even right now, the market is so competitive. It's just hard to find good people who want to work right now.
My wife and I were on our weekly date night last night, and you've met Lenee, and we were at a restaurant, and it's a locally owned restaurant. They only have a couple locations here in the Northern Virginia area, but they do things extremely well. It's great ownership, great management, and the gentleman who's waiting on us is always. It seems like he's always the guy that waits on us. You ever go to a restaurant? It's like seems like it's the same person's there all the time that ends up waiting on you. And my wife even says to him, "How long have you been here?" Because, and he doesn't look that old, to be quite honest with you. His kids are in high school ages and middle school. We ended up asking him, but she goes, "When Aiden was a baby, I remember you serving me, and Aiden's now 17."
Mm-hmm.
And he goes, "Yeah, I've been here 18 years as a server."
Yeah.
Okay, so he's not running the place. he's extremely happy because, and I said when he walks away, excuse me, I said to Lenee, I said, "This is a testament to the organization he works for, to the restaurant he works for. The ownership here, in order to keep a server here happy for 18 years, has got to be doing a lot of things right."
Exactly.
And it starts with how they're probably treating their employees, how they treat their people. He went through the tough times of COVID and still stayed with the restaurant. He said, "I ended up being home with my wife and my kids in quarantine, and financially that wasn't easy, but man," and he's a fantastic server, as you can probably imagine. He knows his stuff, and it's a testament to the business, though. So this is on all levels. Tell me another one of. Well, let's do this. Let's shift gears a little bit. Tell me about your upcoming book. What's the title? What's it going to be about? Why should people go to your website and be notified when it comes out?
Yeah, so it's going to be called Giant Success, and it'll have 15 core principles and values of Howwing. And so in this book, individuals, entrepreneurs, business owners, salespeople will be able to actually find out the secrets, because Howwing was an excellent salesman. He's the first salesman in the company, but he was also a fantastic boss, employer, just the way he worked with people. So you're going to be able to, pipe into Hal's these principles of leadership of Howwing, of how he built the company, what made him a success, how did he do that? What are those core principles and values that Howwing had as he built this wonderful company from nothing, from him and his two sons and a couple other guys, to over 400 employees and hundreds of millions of dollars in sales. And so this book is going to talk about some of those. It's going to have some amazing stories, as far as from the beginning and through the history of the company, the ups and downs, the highs and lows, how to deal with those things, opposition, and when things don't always go well. And when things do go well, there'll be some really good stories about how he rewarded employees and took care of them and helped them and different things like that,
Well, I know that your dad didn't do it all. As much as you were very humble, I want to give all the credit to your father. And certainly he's given you the foundational mindset, skills, philosophies, and so on. But you played your part in helping that company become and go to where it ended up going to, and still going strong today. But what do you spend your time on now? Tell us a little bit about what do you do in your free time? Justin says I should ask you what your favorite car is.
Well, so a big part. Hi, Justin. How are you? A big part of my what I do today is, of course, working on the book. Excuse me, and trying to get that finished. And then we're also going to be building a training program, a platform that we can go in and train other companies on. Okay, here's the philosophies that made Howwing and Little Giant a success. And we can teach those to entrepreneurs, to other companies, to sales teams. So, that's what I'm working on right now. That's one of the main things I'm working on right now. I also started another company with 2 other partners where we do multifamily housing, provide multifamily housing for people. We have a property management company, and we even got into some other businesses like axe throwing and escape key games. And we opened a hamburger place in Provo, Utah. And so we're kind of dabbling in a few other little things, but mostly multifamily housing and property management is what I do now. Which has been very rewarding, and it has been pretty successful. So those are some of the things that I've been working on, and trying to stay in good shape and take care of myself, and doing, a lot of these different podcasts, and being involved in this mastermind with you. I mean, I've kept myself really busy, and so I was surprised. I was like, man, I'm going to have a lot more time on my hands to golf and do other things like that. But
No.
somehow I've been, just busy, really busy. And then also in my church, I do a lot of service in my church, and that's been very rewarding. And so those are kind of some of the things that I'm doing right now, just to keep active, and it's been great. It's been really fun.
So people can call on you for sales training. They can call on you for consulting, executive coaching, speaking, and they can find everything out about you on DougWing.com, including registering for the soon to be released book. When is your target date? Do you have a target date for when the book comes out?
Yes, I do. Yeah. So we're actually pretty close to being completed here in the next couple of months, and we'll go to editing probably November and December area. And then my goal was to have the book released on March 5th, which is my dad's birthday. And so that's the goal. And I thought that would be kind of a cool date to do the, release of the book. And as far as my website goes, you can go there for more information on coaching, on speaking, on training for companies, and different things like that as well.
Leave us with one last, you mentioned that there's 15 principles being shared in the book. Leave us with one last principle you would say, this is going to help everyone listening lead a better business, maybe a better life.
Well, I think
maybe one of your favorite principles.
Yeah, I would say one of them is being a generous person. And now in today's society, I think a lot of us are more self-centered. We're kind of consumed with making money and being successful. But I think one of the things that made my dad really special as a person, as a businessman, as a friend, was his generosity. And I'll give you an example of that. When the company went just crazy doing this infomercial, and went from producing 400 ladders a day to 7,000 a day, three shifts a day, 24/6, Hal Wing became even more of a wealthy man, right? And he could have just said, "Hey, I piled it up in his bank account," and continued on. But one of the things that was impressive is one day I'm in a management meeting. He comes in and has a conversation that lasted about 30 seconds because he was always on the go. Our CFO was there, our CEO, and my brother and I were there, who were the owners at the time, the majority owners with my dad. And my dad says, "Hey, I want to give back to the company. We've been so successful with this infomercial. I want to give $1 million back to the employees. Can we do it?" And our CFO was like, "Hal, you can do it, but you're crazy. I wouldn't do it if I were you. That's just, it's not smart." My dad's like, "Well, it's not your company. I'm not asking you for permission. I'm asking you, can we afford it?" So he said, "Yeah, you can afford it." So at that time, we sat down with all the employees we had, and determined, how long they'd been there, what their position was, and took $1 million cash and divided it amongst our employees as a bonus, as a thank you, appreciation for what they've done for us. And that day that we handed out those checks, there were people just crying. I mean, they were in tears of my dad's generosity. And I mean, there were employees that were there for 2 or 3 weeks, brand new employees that, walked away with $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 checks, right? It's just unheard of. And so, doing those types of things, being generous back to your people, to your employees, that helped develop that love for him, and the longevity, and the loyalty and the dedication to my dad and the company. But he was such a good man, had such a good heart, and gave back to his employees and to so many other people. I mean, there's going to be a chapter in there of his philanthropy and his giving, which is unbelievable. Yeah.
Yeah. This obviously a really important lesson in business. I've seen it spill over to you as well. You've been very generous with us at our mastermind groups and meetings. And we're very grateful, not just for the generosity, but for you coming into the group and sharing insights like this and continuing to. I have had a blast. This is awesome. Everybody on here, Doug says you're the most generous person, Ken says you're the most generous person he's ever known. That's awesome and true. Joaquin says amazing. He's in Norway. Doug, thanks for being on here. This has been terrific. We went a little long. My goal is to try to keep this to 30 minutes, but this has been awesome. And I'd love to have you back again if you'd be willing.
Yeah, maybe when the book comes out, we can do it again. Joe,
yes.
I appreciate it. It's great to see you. And it's always good to see you and be on your show. It's been an incredible privilege. Thank you, sir.
Happy to be your wingman. Happy to have you on the show. Everyone, go to dougwing.com. Get registered for the book release coming out next March, most likely. But let's put the pressure on. Let's get on his list. And if you need him for any other type of help, you can reach him and contact him through that site. Doug, thank you so much. Everyone, I want to challenge you to take these principles and not be average. Go out there, make your own mark, do the hard work that it takes, and follow these Halloween principles that Doug's kind of brought to life and is sharing now with the world. Thanks, Doug.
Thank you, Joe. Bye.
Tune in next week for the Not Your Average Joe Show with international business mentor Joe Soto.